The LA Kings are in the hunt in the Pacific Division, second place right now. We are joined by Eddie Garcia of Locked On Kings to talk about how this team is getting it done and what their prospects are for the second half of the season. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us today. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On LA Kings, Eddie Garcia. And Eddie, the Kings surprised a lot of people last year, maybe making the playoffs a year earlier than most people anticipated. This year, they are in second place, playing fairly consistent hockey, a little game on, game off sometimes. But what has this team done this year that has helped them solidify second place and be contending for first place in the Pacific?
Well, it has definitely been a process for the Kings. Early on, they were playing some wild games. They had a 9-8 overtime loss to Seattle. They had a 7-6 win against Minnesota on the road. We didn't recognize this team as Kings fans. It was great to see them be so offensive because they've lacked a lot of scoring punch over the last few years, but they had relied on defense, and there was no defense being played. So it was interesting. Head coach Todd McClellan said early on some things that I didn't really understand. He said something like, well, these guys have to figure out how they want to play. And if this is how they want to play, then I'm not sure it's going to be successful. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're the coach. Shouldn't you be telling them how to play? Right. I mean, I get ultimately the players have to do it. You can only tell them to do it. They have to do it. But it took a while for them, I guess, to figure it out. There were a lot of ups and downs, very inconsistent. They would beat teams like Toronto and Tampa Bay and then lose to teams like Chicago and Columbus. There were some nice wins. There were some unexplained losses. There were times when they would play. I mean, I remember a game in Pittsburgh earlier this year. They dominated the Penguins and they were down 3-0 at the end of the first period. And you're like, what's going on? Because a key breakdown would lead to a breakaway or a 2-on-1 and they would score. But they had dominated most of the game until then, but they had to figure out how to eliminate mistakes in key moments, not give up really good scoring chances. And lately, they've done a great job with that. They just played 3 straight division leaders. They won 2 of the 3. The one loss was to Boston. No shame there. And they actually played 2 really good periods against the Bruins. So things have really, really solidified of late. They're playing much better defense. The penalty kill, which was called out in a players-only meeting, I guess not a players-only meeting, a management and players meeting by GM Rob Blake. He even said to the media, he told them, the penalty kill has to improve. It has of late. And they've gotten some decent goaltending from a very unexpected source.
Yeah, talk to me about that, because Jonathan Quick has pretty much struggled all season.
He has. And Cal Peterson, who they signed to a 3-year deal that kicked in this year, who they thought was going to be the heir apparent to Jonathan Quick, is playing in the AHL after being put on waivers. So I knew the goaltending going into the season was a huge question mark. Didn't know if Cal was going to emerge and take the job away from Jonathan Quick, or if Quick in the final year of his contract, a 10-year deal, was going to play the way he played last year, which was a little bit better than everybody thought. And the answer has been none of the above. Pheonix Copley, a total journeyman, signed in the offseason with no fanfare whatsoever, just to be a guy who was going to be a veteran in the AHL in case of emergency, break glass. Well, they broke glass, and he's come up, and he's been amazing. Now, the thing is, he's not playing out of this world. He's just been what they've needed, solid. Jonathan Quick has not been solid, and obviously Cal Peterson has not been solid. They've been poor, below average at best. So he's just come in and has stopped the pucks he's needed to stop, and with the improved offense, that's been enough. His record is 10-2. Which is, ultimately the best thing. His goals against is okay, and his save percentage is okay. But it is the one thing that makes you think that maybe this is sustainable, because like I said, it's not like if he were playing out of his mind and you knew this couldn't last, that might be one thing, but he's not. He's just playing good, solid hockey, giving the Kings a chance to win every game. And lately they've been winning more than they've lost.
Yeah, obviously, come closer to playoff time, do you go with a journeyman like Copley, or do you go back to Quick? But obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. Uh, Talk to me about the addition of Kevin Fiala, what he's meant to this team, leading the team with 42 points right now.
Yeah, he just came off a hat trick game against Vegas. He's leading the Kings in goals, assists, and points. So I'd say the offseason acquisition has worked out so far. I knew that he was a very talented player, but getting to see him on a night in, night out basis, his puck handling ability is really off the charts. Every once in a while, he'll get himself into trouble because he's got so much confidence in his ability. He may hold on to the puck a little bit longer than he should. He might try and make a pass that maybe wasn't really there, but more often than not, he will do something with the puck where he'll pull and drag and wait an extra second to get a better angle on a shot, or his vision on the ice to see a player who's on the back door to find him and put it on his tape. Really, his passing ability is a lot better than I thought it was. And one thing I'll give him credit for, he's been, if you want to call it, demoted a couple of times to the third line, but he's not let it affect his play at all. It's almost like he likes playing on the third line better than he does the top line with Andre Kopitar and Adrian Kempe. Maybe it's because he now knows that he's the top dog on that line, and he can kind of be a little bit more assertive and aggressive and not defer. But he's been as advertised. The points are definitely there. The goal scoring is about where we thought it would be. But if you're talking about how did the big offseason acquisition work for the Kings, A+ right now.
Talk to me a little bit about Arthur Kaliev. I know he's injured right now, but 7 power play goals to lead the team. How far away is he from coming back, and what has he meant to the power play?
He's on injured reserve, but that was retroactive, and he's eligible to come off at any point. So it should be at any time. The team's playing well at the moment, so I'm not, you know how it is in hockey. We don't know exactly what the injury is, so they can take as much time as they want with it because the team's playing well. They're not missing him at the moment. But he has been a very key part of their improved power play. Unfortunately, his 5-on-5 scoring isn't there. I mean, he's almost like a power play specialist, but he has an exceptional NHL shot. It's that thing where you've seen with a few, most notably probably with Alexander Ovechkin and Steven Stamkos. You put him on that face-off dot and just set him up and let him fire it away. And that's where he's getting his goals. And more often than not, he's putting into the back of the net. So a terrific addition as far as the power play goals. Now they just need to get him going, though, 5-on-5, and then he could be, like a borderline all-star player, perhaps. But right now he feels like more of just a power play specialist. But good young player with an exceptional NHL shot, and it really shows on the power play.
Trade deadline is now a little less than 2 months away. What do you expect the Kings to do at the deadline?
Well, I guess it's one of the worst rumors in all of sports that the Kings would love to get Jakob Chychrun from Arizona. Of course, they're not the only one standing in line for that. There are plenty of players who would love to get him, but specifically the Kings, they have so many good right-handed defensemen that they need somebody desperately on the left side. They have a lot of young, attractive pieces. The problem is, from what I hear, Arizona is asking for the moon. And why shouldn't they? They know they're in a position of strength, and there are plenty of suitors, and it's just who's going to give us what we want. Right now, the asking price, in my opinion, is too high. If it is what we hear it is, Quentin Byfield and Brant Clark, 2 very high former first-round picks, I don't see the Kings doing that, as attractive as Jakob Chychrun is. And he's very attractive, and he does fill the biggest need right now for the Kings other than goaltending. But the Kings, I don't see them making a move to improve goaltending. I think they're going to – I don't know that they can do that. Maybe if we're going to look for something else, maybe it's a net. But I think right now they're going to stay with what they've got and see how it plays out as far as the goaltending goes. But there's no doubt the Kings have interest in Jakob Chychrun. It's just, would Arizona kind of come off their asking price? The Kings do have a lot of good young assets they'd be willing to part with, maybe even a couple of younger NHL level players, maybe. But we'll see. We'll see. That's definitely, I think the Kings will bring in a left-handed defenseman for some depth. I don't think it's going to be Jacob Chikrin because I don't think they're going to pay that price. But whoever is second or third on that list, I think Gavrikov maybe from the Blue Jackets is a name that has been mentioned. So I would see them making a move to shore up the defense, specifically a left-handed shot defenseman. But like I said, I don't see them making a big move for a guy like Jacob Chikrin.
Eddie, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, it's obviously Locked On LA Kings. Don't just do Locked On Kings because you might get a Sacramento basketball team, but it's Locked On LA Kings. You can find me on Twitter at Eddie on Fox. Also, of course, the show account is at Locked On Kings. And yeah, wherever you get your podcast, and of course on YouTube as well.
All right, Eddie, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm glad I could finally connect with you, Gil. Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college bowl season, pro and college basketball, soccer, and of course the NHL. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. And hey, maybe you want to take your knowledge of the NHL and check out the great odds and betting opportunities at betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.